Birds 365 on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Wow, Johnny Mac disappeared. I'm sure he's having
he saw I was coming, Jody.
Transmission issues. No, he's had some connection issues with his internet outlet of late, but he sounded perfectly fine when he was saying the Eagles trade was a win for Howie Roseman. I tend to disagree, and we'll get him back up here at some point. So, Jeff Kerr, you got to go thumbs up, thumbs down. I know it's a bigger, broader picture, and John and I touched on a lot of the aspects, and you and I can do so here. But at the end of the day, you got to come up with was the trade a win or was it a loss? What you believe right now. We'll decide 5 years from now when we look back at it and see how everybody did. That's when you get the definitive answer. But we as fans, as media members, need to give our projections before any snaps have ever been played. This a win or a loss for the Philadelphia Eagles? It's a trade.
I called it a huge gamble in a column I wrote for CBS Sports on it. I'm not a fan of it for 2024. I'm a fan of the pick, but that pick's in 2026. What's this team going to look like in 2026? Is Nolan Smith going to be good in 2026? Is Cindy Brown going to be good? Is Jalen Carter going to be an all-pro? Is Jordan Davis ever going to figure it out? That's what I don't know. But I do know for 2024, I think you might have the best pass rush in the NFL with Haason Reddick, Bryce Huff, and Josh Sweat. But right now, Jody, I'm not pleased about the trade. I understand it from their end. I understand they weren't going to pay Haason Reddick. They basically said, see you later. But I think you could have tried to work something out. You had the cap space. And this is a guy who's had 10 sacks every season with 4 different defensive coordinators. Now he's going to his 5th, whether it was with Philly or with New York. I mean, look, I understand it from their end. I get it, but doesn't mean you got to be happy about it.
No, I mean, Jeff, and I apologize. I had to get up to get the dog out, but the big name aspect, the immediacy aspect of it, I think everybody's caught into that. And I think, Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman have different jobs. And one of Howie's jobs is to serve both masters, immediacy in the future. And Nick's trying to win games. So if you want Nolan Smith on the field, you believe in Nolan Smith. How's he going to get on the field if Haason Reddick and Bryce Huff and Josh Sweat are here?
We were talking about that last night on WIP about, well, who's going to replace him? Well, it's Nolan Smith. That's the gist of it, right? Bryce Huff's going to start. Josh Sweat's going to start. Well, if Haason was here, how many snaps realistically is Nolan Smith going to get? 10%? 20 at most? That's a first-round draft pick. Then other questions arise. Well, why did we draft this guy? Well, now you're getting your answer. They believe in Nolan Smith.
Here's the reason why I'm not buying Howie Roseman and John McMullen's line of logic. Just a couple of years ago, they had T-shirts made up on a quote from the Rams general manager, Mr. Snead, who said, F the picks. He didn't care. He traded picks. He was all in on a season, and the Rams won the Super Bowl. And if I'm Howie Roseman going into this season, I'm saying F the picks. I get the whole Howie's got to win this year, next year, the year after. He's got more responsibility than does the head coach. I agree with that. I understand that. But are they not all in for this upcoming season? Do you really want to trade your best defensive player for a pick you're not going to see for 3 years? There's overall philosophy, and then there's, yes, in the moment philosophy. And in the moment is the Eagles are a Super Bowl contender. They want to be a Super Bowl contender. This is a trade that they may get dividends for 3 years down the road. I'm sorry, if you're an Eagle fan, why should you care about 3 years down the road? Howie Roseman might, but an Eagle fan should care about this upcoming season. And Howie Roseman shouldn't be able to, oh, yeah, but we'll be better down the road. Well, when they get bounced in the first round of the playoffs again, is he going to be able to say, yeah, but we're going to get better down the road because that jet pick might actually be a 2 years from now? I'm not buying.
It's just ironic to me how you keep saying you're in a Super Bowl window, which you are, but if you're in a Super Bowl window, wouldn't you want your best roster on the field to win a Super Bowl?
Yeah, the F them picks less Snead thing. I think everybody got, like, the Eagles have never believed that. I mean, they would never say F them picks. I tend to lean more towards Les Snead because I think the NFL as a whole overvalues draft picks to a ludicrous degree against proven players, and that's what Haason Reddick is. So I get that part of it, but the vast majority of the league thinks like Howie. They don't think like Les Snead. In fact, I would say the vast majority of the league leans even further to give me them picks over constant. Just let me get those picks. Let me get those picks, especially the younger GMs who are all like, I gotta have those picks. Gotta have that extra 4th round pick, that extra 7th round pick.
For the draft pick, I'm not going to play.
Yeah, exactly. So I get that part of it, but the whole vacuum aspect, I think people have a problem. Just, it's not one move. It's not just one thing. They don't want to pay the guy $20+ million.
That's what it comes down to. That's exactly what it comes down to. You look at the top edge rushers in the league: Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, what they're getting paid. Haason Reddick has 4 straight double-digit sack seasons. Only Myles Garrett has done that. He's done it with 4 different defensive coordinators. Haason Reddick has every right to go to an organization and say, where's my money? Why am I the 20th highest paid edge rusher in the NFL? Why is Bryce Huff, who literally has done this for 1 season, getting paid more money than me? He has every right to do that.
Oh, yeah.
I have defended him left and right on that.
Oh, I said he should have held in after 2022. That's when he should have seized his moment, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And, he was a good soldier about it. And, people were asking me, was he a locker room problem? Like, no, he wasn't. He really wasn't anything. He was just here. He loved to be here. He wanted to play here. But you want to have your cake and eat it too. You want to get paid the most money. I don't blame him.
And the reason why I'm just not buying, and I understand the economic workings of a National Football League team are different than just cold hard cash. Yeah, Jeff Lurie saved $20 million with the trade. The Philadelphia Eagles didn't because of the way Howie Roseman structures contracts and the fact that Haason Reddick had phony years on the back end of his deal. And they're going to take this dead cap hit this year with him being traded. So they didn't really save $15 million. They saved $1 million. That's different than saving 50. They would have had to pay him $20 million. You would have had to pay somebody $20 million. That's Jeff Lurie's money. Do we really want to start a GoFundMe page for Jeff Lurie because he would have had to pay his?
If Howie wanted Haason Reddick, he could have had Haason Reddick. It's not about saving money. Jeffrey Lurie has proven time and time again he will spend money to make this team the best possible.
He's one of the few that does it.
Yeah, it's about the mindset of building the roster and saying, all right, I do not think this guy is valued at over $20 million per year. And that creates a domino effect. If you said, we have him, so let's make him happy. Then all of a sudden the next guy says, what about me? What about me? What about me? That's why you have to be disciplined about it. It's not about saving money.
Well, then why'd they redo Josh Sweat's deal?
Because
Josh Sweat didn't have a choice.
Well, that too, but they gave it again. It was very similar to the cornerback situation last year, defensive back situation, except they added one. Last year they had the players. They had the 3 players. It was Slay, it was Bradbury, it was CJ Gardner-Johnson, and they knew they could keep 2 of them, or they could have kept all 3, but they said we want to keep 2 of them. And then it toggled back and forth. Originally, it was going to be Slay and CJ. Then it was going to be CJ and Bradbury. Then it ended up being Bradbury and Slay. That was the plan. Now, they added Huff to the mix. And by that point, when Huff came on, they gave both players permission to seek trades. Haason Reddick and Josh Sweat. Josh Sweat got his deal done. Cheaper. And once he got his deal done, Haason was out in the cold. Very similar to CJ. And he wasn't going to be back because they factored in they could have 2 of the 3 for what they wanted to accomplish. And the whole picture, it was very similar. And if Reddick would have came to an agreement like Sweat, then Sweat would have been out the door. But Sweat got it done early. The Eagles were able to save some money in that. In the case of Haason, again, the best case scenario would have been 18, in my assumption, from a team-friendly standpoint. If they could have got 18, I think they would have done it. You have to place value on players. It's not like you can't call up Jeffrey Lurie and say, hey, pay this guy, pay that guy. He'll probably do it if you want to figure out the bookkeeping. He'll probably give you whatever you want. So this is all on Howie. Don't blame anybody else. He does not think that's a $20 million player. If he's wrong, he's going to look bad.
This is what I guess kind of bothers me with the whole Reddick thing. And I compared this back to when Trotter was going through his thing with the Eagles. And we all know the Eagles don't value a linebacker, but Jeremiah Trotter was coming off an all-pro season. He was an ascending player. I think he was 25 at the time. And the Eagles tagged him. And again, different front office, of course, but same philosophy. And Trotter wanted his pay, and the Eagles didn't want to pay. Now, again, Trotter was a lot younger, but the Eagles said, I ain't paying the linebacker that. See you later. Well, guess who got burned late in the 2002 season and in the NFC Championship game when they had a Super Bowl team? Oh, the Eagles, because they have Barry Gardner and LeVon Kirkland back there instead of Jeremiah Trotter. So
Barry Gardner,
yeah,
hell of an agent, Barry Gardner.
Oh, he had a hell of an agent
than better agent than player.
No, absolutely. And then I just hope the same thing doesn't happen when it's December and January and they can't rush the passer because Josh Sweat disappeared in the second half again. Now, I will defend Josh Sweat in this. He was a good second half player in 2021, 2022. And the Eagles are banking on that. They're also banking on Bryce Huff being a good second half player like he was last year. And obviously a lot more. Haason was good in the second half really every year, but last year. I think they're banking on the upside of Huff, the upside of Sweat, the upside of Nolan Smith, and the eventual decline of Haason Reddick. I just don't see why you couldn't keep him for 2024 and then just move on.
And that to me was the key move if they were going to get anything done. And the one thing we don't know, and we have yet to, this is going to be, at least for me, a key factor. If a deal gets done between the Jets and Haason, I would have thought that it would have already been announced because they had all that time when Haason had permission to seek a trade, negotiate with all other teams, and put his number out there through his agent to find out what his asking price is going to be. The fact that we're now on Monday morning and the trade was announced on Friday, I get it. They're shut down for the weekend. If you're an NFL
holiday weekend too.
Holiday weekend, but I have heard too many times it's a 365-day-a-year job. I need to know what that number is, and we'll find out what that number is, and we should absolutely put that into play here with the Philadelphia Eagles and what it would have probably cost to keep Haason Reddick, because remember, Haason was on record. Johnny Mac, you're down there all the time, so I'm going to ask you to give me an opinion on Haason Reddick as a guy. He said he wanted to stay. He came out and vehemently shut down the report that he requested a trade. He came out and said, no. I didn't ask for a trade. The Eagles granted me permission so that I could check against the what his value is on the open market. So he was not forcing the Eagles' hand a little bit, as far as I know. You were there last year. You saw him with his teammates. You know him as a guy. Did Haason Reddick want to leave the Philadelphia Eagles?
No, he's a great guy, very professional. As I said, could have held in after the 2022 season. If I were his agent, I would argue that that's exactly what he should have done, to be honest. I've said that time and time again. In a lot of ways, we've been making comps. I'm going to make a weird comp to DeMarco Murray when the Dallas Cowboys just ran him into the ground and the Eagles signed him, and he had nothing left. And he went to Tennessee, had a decent season, but he didn't have the same juice because he had like 400 touches the year before the Eagles signed him, and there was just nothing left. The Eagles played Haason Reddick 75% of the snaps last year, undersized guy. I don't think it's to that level where he's got nothing left, but I think that plays into it as well. They rode that guy, and they rode him hard over the past two seasons. And that, unfortunately, this is an unforgiving sport and an unforgiving sentiment when it comes to evaluating players. And they know they ran them into the ground. And I think that factors into their decision saying, now, when you're saying Haason didn't want to leave, no, he didn't want to leave, but he wanted $25 million from what I understand.
That's top 5 in the league. That just wasn't going to
And
happen.
and by the way, from a production standpoint, I get it. From his standpoint, I get it. I get it 100% from his standpoint. I'm not saying I don't, but if I'm on the other end and I'm saying we just rode this guy and we're going to pay him 25. It's not about paying him for what he did. Sometimes you do that. I always bring up Derek Jeter and the Yankees. Sometimes you say, you know what? Keep going. You've done so much for this organization.
Even though you shouldn't. That's baseball too. Baseball, you get paid for what you did. Football, you get paid for what you're going to do.
Yeah. In the case of Haason Reddick, yeah, they don't think he's that player moving forward. And if they're wrong, and by the way, I hope they are wrong because Haason is a good guy.
I do too.
But that's what their belief is. He's not going to be that same player.
Yeah, and I'm evaluating the Eagles' evaluation. I think they're wrong. I do not think he's a drastically descending player. His numbers came down slightly this year. Why do I think his numbers came down? Because of their defensive coordinator. That's plain and simple. In my evaluation of the Eagles defense this past year, and Haason Reddick in it, he declined statistically production-wise because of the DC, not because he got old, not because they rode him like a stallion.
Well, they did.
I believe it was their defensive coordinated scheme. I
think they rode him too much like a stallion. But by the way, I want to add this on while we're still talking about Haason here. Another reason there was so much vitriol in this trade, not because you traded a good pass rusher, you traded an ambassador to the community, a homegrown guy, a guy who wanted to be here. Like Haason Reddick was the Philadelphia Eagle. He fit the mold they want this organization wants, and you just moved on from him. Do you think they would have done that if he was, say, a draft pick by the Eagles?
I hope it had nothing to do with anything. And I like Haason Reddick.
Yeah, we're talking about the only reason.
I honestly don't care. I want to narrow focus back in on the football player. The fact that he was good to compute, the fact that he was a home guy. You want to get moved on from by the Philadelphia Eagles? Be a Philadelphia guy who started elsewhere and then came home. And then you're guaranteed to be run out the door. Swift, Bayard, Haason.
I'll say this.
The coming home song has a link to it. And when it's over and done with, see you later, bye.
Of those three,
you're a Philly guy.
Of those three, the one that got traded wanted to be here. I'm not so certain the running back wanted to be here.
I don't think he wanted to be here either, but I'm sure Olamide wanted to be here. But
I'm sure he did.
Olamide.
He's not moving far either.
Add him to the group. 4 ex-Philly guys who this year became ex-Phillies.
I'm sure Olamide would have liked to stick around, and he always had a role in Nick Sirianni's offense, but it's no longer Nick Sirianni's offense, so he didn't have a role. But,
I always like talking to him too. It's a shame.
He's a good guy. Now, Jody brought up, and it's, the defensive coordinators, plural, were terrible last year. I mean, it's fair to point, although I think Sean Desai wasn't as bad as people spun him to be.
As bad as Matt Patricia.
He was a scapegoat for the personnel.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. Well, and again, I don't get to see behind the scenes fully. If Sean Desai, that there was a lot of talk about presence, and if people didn't believe in him, people don't believe in him. You can't make people. But I think from a fundamental standpoint, I don't think he was terrible at his job. Maybe he doesn't have the presence to be in that position. Maybe that part of it's true. I can't speak to that. But I know who does have the presence to be in that job, and that's Vic Fangio. So if that part of it, if you want to blame it on the coordinator this year, don't you got to give the coordinator the rope? And if he doesn't want that type of player, if he wants Andrew Van Ginkel, you should have signed Andrew Van Ginkel. That's another story. But if he wants that type of player, and he wants that quarter flat defender who can drop in coverage when they need to drop in coverage. And he says, should you listen to him?
I've listened to Vic Fangio. That's just my opinion. I mean, I don't think Jalen Ramsey liked listening to Vic Fangio. I don't think Xavier Howard.
A lot of people didn't like.
Well, you know what? It's funny when you hear the stories about what went on in Miami, and I'm like, why does Miami's defense act like they were a top 5 unit? Maybe they would have been if they would have listened to the guy.
Yeah, well, they were a lot better than they were.
I just think it's funny Ramsey's complaining when literally the guy had a 17 passer rating in coverage last year. That's first team All-Pro numbers, and you're complaining about a guy who put you in success? I don't get it. I love Jalen Ramsey. He's a stud, but I think he thinks he's Deion Sanders, and he's not.
Yeah, I was going to say that's on the player. That's not on the scheme. That's not on the coach. Guy just likes to complain. He's a diva. He's a talented diva. He's a great player, but he's a stone cold diva who's not feeling comfortable. He's not bitching about something. So the fact that he bitched about Vic Fangio shouldn't surprise anybody. All right, Jeff Kerr, this move by the Eagles, we're going to debate it next week, the week after, the month after, first week of the season, fourth month of the season, the year after that, and at some point, 3 or 4 years down the road.
Or 20 years down the road, we'll still be complaining about it.
20, no, certainly 5. Will it have an effect on Eagles draft? Since they're now taking one of their pass rushers out of the mix, how they was going to be used, how he was going to be played, the future and everything else, all in, do you think this now puts more of an emphasis on the Eagles going for a pass rusher in the draft, first round, second round, third round, fourth round? How much does it add to Howie's ability to go, well, we always draft in the trenches. Trenches first. When in doubt, go to the trenches. Are they going to the trenches again? If they've got their pass rushes for this year, since we're saying they could afford to give up Haason because they got to get Nolan Smith on the field, what do you say if they take a pass rusher in the first round?
So one of my bold predictions for the draft, and keep in mind I'm saying bold because it's stuff I'm hearing at the owners' meetings, but I said I wouldn't have been surprised if they drafted a pass rusher in the first or second round of the draft, and this is when they had Haason Reddick on the roster. And now I'm really starting to think that could be the move if a guy falls to 22. I think it's really going to be the best available player, as it should be. It just depends what they feel is the best available player. There could be this is my prediction. I think they go in the trenches as of April 1st. I think they will pick in the trenches, and I'm going to lean toward pass rusher.
Yeah, if they do take a pass rusher, then I will immediately reverse my opinion. They do not believe in Nolan Smith if they take a pass rusher. As simple as that. If they take a pass rusher at 22, even if it's best player available type situation, at that point you say, you know what? All right, we're going to move down. If you can move down, you go in a different direction if you believe in Nolan Smith. If you don't, and there's legitimate reasons why maybe you shouldn't. His shoulder, we'll see how he, works out in the offseason. We'll see how if he's remade his body, if he's added some weight, all that kind of stuff. As we get back into it, Eagles start April 15th, I believe, the offseason program.
By the way, John,
mandatory minicamp, by the way. Yeah.
Boy, I like how that dropped during Philly's opening day along with Haason Reddick.
Well, the NFL does that. So the NFL releases the entire league at one time. And sometimes there's some tweaks, but yeah, they're going to have a mandatory minicamp. Now, part of that is new coordinators. Probably the new coordinators are saying, let's give us some time with the stinking players, Howie. And if you go back to Nick Sirianni's first year, 2021, they had a mandatory minicamp schedule. And we were still, he canceled it because we were in the death throes of COVID, this silly time that we were. And the players, he was negotiating to get the players in for off-season work. Like a bunch of them weren't going to show up because it was still COVID. They were like, we're not going to do anything. And he said, if you show up for the off-season work, we won't have mandatory minicamp. And So he canceled it, and it worked out, and they stayed relatively healthy. And they said, "Let's continue this on. Let's continue." And now it's back, and it should be back. I think that's a net positive to have mandatory minicamp when you have two new coordinators. Even though they're veteran coordinators, you still need to teach guys stuff, and you need to get young players involved, and you need to get Bryce Hupp and Nolan Smith, as example, involved. I think that's a positive that mandatory minicamp is back. Jeff,
So,
any
but
negative?
let me ask you a question on
I
that,
do too.
John and Jeff. How'd that conversation go with Howie and the Eagles head of training medicine that we believe had a major say in no mandatory minicamp, less hitting, shorter practices, everything else? We're going to be very safe with our players and put safety ahead of actual work. How'd that conversation go when Howie had to tell him that, hey, we're going back to mandatory minicamp because the coordinators say we need it?
This is what I would have said. Well, do you want to lose 6 or 7 to end the year again? That's all I would have said. Shut up.
I mean, that's the way this league works, the pendulum effect. It didn't work last year, so you can change it. If it works, you can't change it.
Yeah, like they had every right not to do mandatory minicamp last year because of what happened in 2022. And I'm sitting in the back of my mind thinking, well, wait a minute, you got 2 new coordinators. Shouldn't you at least try? But now
Probably would have helped Sean Desai.
I think it would significantly help Sean Desai.
Right. Didn't they have 2 new coordinators last year? And
that's what I said. That's what I just said. And they should have had it, and they didn't. But hindsight's 2020.
Yeah, 2 new coordinators with no experience, so they had no cachet to say, all right, I need this, I need that. By the way, that is going down, and I'll leave it there with you at Jeff Kerr CBS. Make sure you follow Jeff on X, Twitter, doing some baseball. I saw you down there at the Phillies. You get a Phillies win finally.
Oh, yeah. But I'll tell you what, John, I have, and again, I love Eagles fans, but I have much more of an appreciation for them after this weekend's Phillies series, just because Phillies fans or Philly fans in general, let's treat every baseball game like it's an NFL game.
Because it's a football city, Jeff. So
absolutely
everything is life and death. Everything is life and death.
So I'll say this off the record. I was talking to some people in the Phillies, and they said, well, you're going to get on Yohan Rojas for not getting you hit. You better get on Bryce.
Yeah.
You don't have a hit either.
I mean, they treat every Phillies game like it's an Eagles game. And, if you're a manager, you got to be savvy when you're playing 162 and maybe your bullpen had to pitch 7 innings one day. Well, then you're not going to, you're not going to pitch certain guys. You may need to rest some guys.
They have 2 off days in April. 2. Oh, and by the way, it's going to rain this week. So those off days are going away.
Yeah, it's raining already.
I think they played
if it rains, that becomes an off day. It's not like they disappear.
No.
You just have to adjust on the fly. And you're right. Everybody second guesses the adjustment that the manager's got to make.
Everybody hated the lineup yesterday, and that lineup got 3 runs in the 7th inning for them.
Right. They won.
You went down a Phillies wormhole. What the hell I was talking about? Oh, the coordinators. Jeffrey Lurie made a big deal about how good the coordinators were and having experienced coordinators, and you got to have that experience. Well, what the hell happened? They went to the Super Bowl with inexperienced coordinators. They hired inexperienced coordinators. Is it just a matter of, oh, that didn't work, we got to go the other direction? When I was talking about that pendulum, oh, well, these guys suck, so let's bring in some veteran guys.
I'll tell you what, I was sitting right next to Dan Quinn at the start of the NFC Coaches Breakfast last week, and he thought he was so ready for questions and questions on end about his draft pick at number 2. And here's little old me. Let's mention Brian Johnson. He gave me a big smile on his face and gave me a 5-minute answer. He could not wait.
Everybody probably pissed at you for, letting Quinn, I can't think of the word. What a political word. Jeez, I'm losing my mind.
Filibustering?
Filibuster, yeah. Never let the coach filibuster. Thank you.
Yeah, but you know what, though? A lot of them use that for content because
Nick loves the filibuster. And you get dirty looks when you set him up for the filibuster.
But it was funny, and I wrote a column on it saying Brian Johnson's going to get the opportunity. He didn't really get with the Eagles.
How do you figure?
Well, they're actually implementing some of his designs in that offense.
Who says?
Who says? What do you mean?
Yeah,
like
who
what?
says they're going to implement things? I'm throwing a BS flag. I'm telling whoever told you that is lying to Jeff Kerr's face.
He's the assistant
I
head
don't believe-
coach.
Who's the offensive coordinator?
Who cares? He calls the
Who
plays.
cares? Are you kidding me? I think Brian Johnson's going to have a really nice year because he's going to be doing next to nothing in Washington.
Yeah, assistant head coach is tends to be more of a ceremonial type
Yeah.
than anything else.
I actually think he's part of the brain trust. Well, he is part
Well,
of the brain trust.
every situation is different because
Yeah.
here they have an associate head coach, they have an assistant head coach, and that's more
Is
ceremonial.
Kevin Patullo technically the associate
He's
head
the
coach?
associate head coach, and that's meaningful. Like he's got a lot of power. So every situation's different. I have no idea.
By the way,
what's going
John, I got to give you a shout out here since apparently none of you beat guys, none of us national guys know who Jake Rosenberg is. I'm like, John McMullen literally just
Talk
mentioned
about
him
him
2
all the
hours
time.
before he left.
I talked about him that day. I happened.
Oh, I was dying, and then I had
Yeah.
someone say, "I don't know who he is because I don't tweet about him." Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not on Twitter every goddamn moment of my life.
Yeah, now you got to learn Bryce Johnston because he's
Yeah, Bryce Johnson.
and Adam Berry, Andrew's younger brother.
Adam
Those are-
Berry's he's moving up in that organization.
Oh, yeah.
Say that.
We shall
yeah.
see.
The
Jeff
GM
Kerr,
factory.
that they're more the GM factory than they are the quarterback factory. That transformation has.
You mean you're not as enthused of the Will Greer signing as everybody else?
If
Yeah,
I
Kenneth
would,
Pickett,
I
Will
would have
Greer.
rather had Matt Corral, who showed out this weekend in the UFL.
Oh, I didn't get any UFL. UFL. How long has the NFL been around? I know we got to let you go. Jeff.
104 years.
One game, the UFL is better with technology and officiating and transparency in one game than the NFL is for over 100 years. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, how about that Brad Wing fake punt? Did you guys see that?
Oh, the guy hit a 64-yard field goal twice. They called timeout. He banged it through 64 yards.
Yeah.
Then he did it again. He hadn't kicked a field goal since high school.
A
Soccer
meaningful
player.
meaningful
Yeah,
field goal.
meaningful field.
So this is what's funny about the Brad Wing thing. So obviously we remember Brad Wing played for the Giants. So there was a 58-yard kick, and Wing was the holder. They basically decided, San Antonio said, you know what? Yeah, we're not going to do this. And there's like 3 seconds left in the half. So Wing lines up like he's going to get the ball. Everybody knows he's throwing it. He just goes back, takes about 2 steps to his right, and just throws his bomb. And you're like, what the hell? What's he doing? He throws it to his left end, and he's wide open, and he caught it for the touchdown. And Wing says, yeah, that technically wasn't the guy I'm supposed to go to. Oh, by the way, we never executed it in practice.
More power to him for making it up on the fly.
Probably a lot of those punters were high school. I think he's one of those Australian though, so he probably wasn't a quarterback.
I mean, he said like when he was in the NFL, he did a lot of that stuff. They're always too afraid to do it. And he said, this is what we like about it. We have plays like this. And he said, you might see more of it.
There's a couple things I like about the UFL in weekend number 1. We'll get to that, but we got to let Jeff Kerr go first. We've had him for like 40 minutes.
Sorry, bud.
Yeah,
Jeff Kerr, thank you very much. We will talk to you again next Monday. Appreciate you jumping in today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks,
Jeff Kerr,
sir.
CBSSports.com, our regular Monday early guest to get the week off on a good footing. All right, Johnny Mac here with you on Birds 365 with my partner, Johnny Mac. We'll come back, talk, as I said, a little UFL, and then we're going to have Andrew DeCecco, InsideTheBirds.com and podcast is going to jump in. He's been busy doing draft evaluation stuff as well. So we'll get his Reddick take, but then talk a little bit about the Eagles and the draft. I want to talk about how you Eagle fans can save some good money on your car insurance. Here's your chance to save upwards of 40% right now with one of JAKIB Sports' great partners. Here's what you need to do. Call one of the 2 managing general partners, either Jim or Fran, and tell them you're a friend of both JAKIB Sports and Birds 365.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Del Val Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!